You're listening to the Comic Crusaders Podcast. I am your host, Al Mega, CEO of Comic Crusaders and Undercover Capes. In this show, I'm sitting down with creators from all walks of life to talk about inspiration, process, the lessons they've learned, and a whole lot more. Wepa! What up, everyone? Al Mega, the host of the Comic Crusaders Podcast. And today, tremendous guest has an amazing book out that has to do with one of America's favorite monsters. You know what I mean? But of course, not just the monster, but the man behind the monsters, what we're going to get into. But before we even introduce this awesome gentleman, I have a co-pilot today. One of my fellow Comic Crusaders, the one and only Nemesis. What's popping, brother?
Hey, what's going on? So looking forward to talking about this book. This is going to be really great. Let's get into it.
It really is going to be great because today, folks, we have he's from my hometown, Brooklyn. All right. My man has written a book called he's written several, but for example, the Abaddon, which I love. I'm a big Twilight Zone guy, so he's done the Twilight Man. All right. But right now, what he has out is Lugosi. And who am I speaking about? This is the one and only Koren Shadmi. Hey, what's popping, kiddo?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for coming on. I know it's early, and we're going to be getting into some crazy little details here about the life of this amazing actor that portrayed one of film's, greatest monsters, if you will. And, Bela Lugosi, a.k.a. Dracula. Before we get into all that stuff, Koren, a little bit about yourself. So are you Brooklyn born? Brooklyn native?
No. I'm originally from Israel, actually. Okay. I was born in Israel, and I came here to study illustration in the School of Visual Arts. So right after the army, and I didn't see any action. I was a graphic designer in the army in Israel. And I came here and I just stuck around because there's just so much more going on in terms of comics and illustration. And then, I actually just recently moved to Queens, so I don't want to disappoint you, Al, but I abandoned Brooklyn, not because it wasn't my choice. It's just gotten so expensive and we had to go to Queens. So, but I love Brooklyn, and we're right on the border. So
my queen is from Queens as well. So this Brooklyn boy also bounced out of Greenpoint and and met his queen from Long Island City. Oh yeah. And then I've been around Brooklyn and Queens basically all my life up until now, where I'm in Florida.
Nice.
Great though. So you said there was more of a scene out here. How old were you when you came here?
I was 22.
So, okay. So what's the difference between the Israeli comic scene and the American comic scene, since you kind of said that there was just more out here?
Well, Israel's a very small country. It's only 6-7 million people. And then there's not much of a legacy or history of comics there. So it's just not a big deal there. If you look at other countries like Japan or France, comics are a huge part of the history of the country, the culture. If you go to Paris, every block there's a comic book store. It's not like that in Israel. So if that's your passion, you can make it. There's a bunch of Israeli artists who have become well known around the world, but it's hard if you're living from there. So it's a lot. There's a lot more opportunities here, and that's one thing that I have in common with Lugosi. I'm also an immigrant that came here and tried to make it. So I had that to feel for him. So.
So what was your first piece of ever seeing Lugosi?
I wasn't that aware of the whole Universal monster world till much later in life. When I was a teenager, I was kind of into goth music. So gotcha. I was listening to Bauhaus, and they had that song Bela Lugosi's Dead. So that was the first time I heard about Bela Lugosi when I was maybe 16. And then I saw Ed Wood also when I was a teenager, which I just loved. But I never really got into the whole, horror, the first horror movies of Hollywood world until basically I started diving deeper into this book and into his character.
Interesting.
One of the things that I really appreciate about your book is that it is such great detail there, especially about the relationship between Lugosi and Boris Karloff. just amazing.
Ooh.
How much research? How did you get all of this information? Because I thought I knew a lot about the man, but I mean, you were pulling things out that I had never heard of, and it was really amazing to learn about this guy.
Yeah, well, I read a few of the biographies and any other material that I could find. There's this great website called the Bela Lugosi blog, which basically archives any interview he's ever done. I don't even know how they found all this stuff. So I read it. It's fascinating. He was, some parts were difficult because he tended to embellish a lot and really change his story a lot. And I put that a little bit in the book where he, tells some yarns and his nurse is like, really, did that really happen? But I found out a lot of amazing facts, and there's a lot of stuff I couldn't even put into the book because there's so many anecdotes and so many stories.
If you could sum up Lugosi for our audience based on your book in one, I'm not going to say one word because that'd be really too difficult. One sentence, maybe one paragraph, but one sentence, hopefully. How would you describe him?
He was the template for all Draculas ever to come, and he was basically the first first actor in the first true supernatural horror movie from Hollywood. Because I think before that it was there was Lon Chaney that did The Hunchback and all those other movies, but there was nothing that was a supernatural monster coming from Hollywood. There was Nosferatu, I think, before, but that was a European movie. So he was the first. He helped carve out what everybody thought of as Dracula, and before that there was really nothing. And the same as Boris Karloff, where Boris Karloff was the first, helped create Frankenstein. And I was just talking to a friend of mine recently. He said, Frankenstein book is not even good. It's kind of boring. And the movie is amazing. And then, so the movie and Karloff helped create what we know today as Frankenstein. And then the same with Lugosi. He helped create what we think of as Dracula, as the vampire. And one of the things that were really interesting is that he chose to show the vampire as this like very debonair, very like handsome and charming monster, which made him a lot more interesting. He was not a ghoul. He was this very charming European figure. And that, I guess, added an added layer of sophistication rather than...
Was that his choice? Was that his choice, or was that the direction that they gave him?
I think it was written into the script, but he was perfect to play it, and he played it in the Broadway play before. So I think he brings it a lot of that into it, but I think it was already kind of carved into the Bram Stoker book, and then carved into the play.
One of the things I found fascinating in your book, and I was kind of hoping you'd expand on a little bit, is that it seems that the more things change, the more things stay the same in entertainment. And reading this book, especially in Hollywood or in Broadway, one of the parts they had in your book was you were talking about during the Dracula play, they had people in the back as a stunt in case people fainted and things like that.
Yeah.
So. How did you find out that kind of information, and have you seen like the script for the Broadway play? I'd love to see that. So I did not give it was originally written put on in England, and then it was brought to Broadway because of success there. And so I kind of read parts of it. I didn't read the whole thing. I didn't find it super interesting. But there was a lot of the material, a lot of the stuff was in the books, in the biographies. They're very detailed, like thick, 500-page books. So you get in there, and then they give you all the fun details, and you kind of need to pick and choose. But there was a lot more, PR stunts back then, and Universal did a lot of PR stunts too for all of its movies. They were more fun, I feel like, about it back then.
Oh yes, I
even
agree.
if you look, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm saying I agree. Back then, they made made it an experience. It wasn't you just going to the movies. It was an experience. It was entertainment for an evening or an afternoon. You know, for hours. It wasn't just hey, movie's done. You know, what I mean, popcorn, trailers, movie, you're done. Goodbye. No, it was an event back in the day, and that's where the magic came from. I think.
Yeah, if you look at the, when I was looking for references, there's a lot of photos of I don't know how you call it, but like the dressing of the front of the theater,
Okay.
the movie theater, and they would do these crazy sculptures and crazy like posters, and they really go all out. So you'd go see, let's say Frankenstein, and there'd be a giant Frankenstein head as you enter, and like posters and lights, and they really like did it up. And then they would do all these like also publicity stunts. Like there's in the book, there's a famous meeting of Karloff and Lugosi, which was kind of like, they were like the Titans, they called them the Titans of Terror. And they met up and they made a whole big deal out of it. They had photographers come in. They probably gave them scripts, to what to say. And you have these really funny photos of like, Karloff trying to kill Lugosi. There's this really funny video also. I'm not sure if it's from the same meetup, but they are playing chess against each other. And it's really pretty funny. It's like 1 minute long. You can find it on YouTube. But they really played it up. They saw that people are reacting to this like kind of, fake animosity between them. And it was really fun.
One of the things I found fascinating in your book was also the amount of biographical information you had from his time in Hungary beforehand, and then his time after his star started to fade. But the question I had was, the book ends with Ed Wood doing some filming with him. Did Lugosi die soon after that? I don't know that part of the story, so.
Yeah, he died very soon after that. I think they shot that in 55, and then he died probably in 56. And Ed Wood had the last, bit of footage of Lugosi. And it was very, as in the tradition of Ed Wood, he would just kind of like go around in some abandoned field and stick some tombstones and shoot it really, it's very like, I don't know if it was 16 millimeter or, it's pretty crappy footage. And then he kind of stuck it. He created a movie. I think it was I get them confused, but I think it was Plan. I don't know if it's Plan 9 from Outer Space or which one was the one that he was really last in.
I think that was the Plan 9. Is that the one where the graveyard scene and like they repeat it 4 or 5 times and he goes like this and runs off?
So they get some, I guess the lawyer who represented someone he knew pretended to be, or like, no, it was a dentist maybe who pretended to be Lugosi. And then he just stuck the footage in there. And that was his way of saying, well, I have the last footage of Bela Lugosi in existence, so let's use it. So that's kind of like the two-sidedness of Ed Wood, that he was a friend of Lugosi, and gave him his last kind of hurrah. And like, in one sense, he was genuinely his friend, but in the other sense, he also like used him. He was like, okay, I have an actor with a big name, and I'm gonna use him to like sell my movies, and because really didn't have talent, so he used anything he could. So
amazing. I want to just bring up and start showing off some pages over here of this beautiful book. There you go. Where's the arrow? There we go. Look at that cover, folks. Look at. So I'll let you find it. I'm sorry. Go ahead, bro.
For all of you who are going to get the book, which I hope is everybody, pick up that book. The back of the book has Koren's sketches, his early work, his character work on Lugosi. Unbelievable. And on all the characters. It's really amazing. I loved going through that. I thought it was really, really wonderful.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get into, man. How's your creative process? So you do all the details here, the writing and the art and all. What's popping?
Yeah, I'm a one-man band.
Hey, you're after
I do
Robert
it all.
Rodriguez Hart, because he used to be called the one-man film crew. So you're the one-man comic crew, all right?
Yeah, I'm one of those, people walk in with a drum and a harmonica and all that stuff. Yeah, no, I do it all. I write the script first, and in the past few books, the way I write it is more like a movie script. So I just describe the scenery and go into the dialogue, and I'm kind of dry about descriptions because I'm like, I already know, this is mostly like a layout for me, so I don't really describe things very much, but it's just enough. And then I draw thumbnails, pencils, inks, and then all this, shebang, the usual comic book assembly line, though I just do it myself.
Oh, the image came out bad. Damn it. I'll get that. I'll bring up cleaner ones. But I mean, again, look at this work here and the coloring. I mean, why do you choose these colors? Is it something that's easier for you to use?
Well, in the book, there's basically two tones. There's black and white for all his memories, and then there's this like kind of reddish sepia tone for his current time of the book takes place, which is when he's comes to the what do you call it, rehab, basically gets himself into rehab. So yeah,
I thought that was a really bold choice. I think it allowed me to really focus on the story more. I mean, the art is wonderful, but I think that if you had gone the full superhero treatment with it, it might have taken away a little bit from the story. So I thought that was really wonderful.
all of his movies are in black and white too, and then
I love it.
Era of Hollywood, films that are all in black and white. So I tried to keep it to that tonality, and I think with this book it really connects, as the same with the Rod Serling book, that most of his stuff was in black and white, so it kind of works. Maybe my future, maybe the next one will be color, because I do like working with color.
I think it also gives you that horror feel even for his real life, because it kind of struck me that the guy almost seemed delusional sometimes and thought he was Dracula, so it was like watching
I think he had a love-hate relationship with the character. I don't think he was ever delusional quite, but he kind of liked being recognized as Dracula. There's all this stuff in his home, like, you see it a little bit in the book when they come to repossess all his furniture. He has like, a coffee table shaped like a coffin, and like, ink fountain shaped like a skull. And like, he kind of, his house looks a little bit like what you would think Dracula's house is. But he also was really kind of angry at being typecast as this villain. He thought he could be, a main guy. He was always cast, almost always, other than Dracula, as like the villain. They called it back then the heavy, like the villain.
The heavy.
The guy who is not the main. And he kind of in his mind, was like, I could be, why am I not, if it was like a Captain America movie, it would be the Red Skull. And he, in his mind, he'd be like, well, why am I not Captain America? So he always thought of himself as being kind of being typecast. He did realize that he wanted to be in the real movies. He wanted to be in like a movie like Gone in the Wind. He didn't want to necessarily be just in these like horror movies. He wanted to, yeah.
Well, those opportunities presented to him in your journey of notes, did he get better opportunity, or they would just turn him down, like, nah, you're this guy?
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, he did in a theater early on some roles that were just kind of like normal roles, and over the years he did do some roles in that were just kind of standard roles. He was never the main guy. He was in this
movie called Ninochka, for instance, and he just plays like this Russian diplomat. But mostly he was just like cast as like the bad guy, and then later he was even demoted to be just kind of like an addition, like a butler, or like like someone who's like an assistant or something, or just like this. So he even was like kind of a little bit demoted. It was almost like kind of he was rising up and down, but he never. I think
he never peaked, huh? To that point,
Dracula was the peak, in a sense.
He couldn't get over it. Indeed,
no, yeah, man. and then he could not. But in the same time, if you think about it, how many actors are there that want to make it, and he should have, he was, I think, in one sense, grateful just for getting that role. So I think he was a very conflicted guy.
In your opinion, do you think it was more to do with him, his attitude, and maybe his personality, or was it the language barrier? Because you hit on that.
I mean, Hollywood back then was a very different place, and you had people that were playing foreigners that were just white people in blackface or like brownface or stuff like that, and that was very common. And they did like to bring talent from Europe, and that would happen, but there was limited tolerance for that. So, if you were British, great. But if you were like anything else, it's like, it was really, so to his credit, you would say, well, despite him having that heavy accent, he made it, and he is like the most famous Hungarian actor ever. So, yeah, I think it was, there's a scene in the book where, and I think it's based on a real, well, no, it's a combination, but there's a scene in the book where he's having a nightmare and Boris Karloff is haunting him while he's in the hospital and saying, if you only bothered to get rid of your accent, you could have been like, like me. And Karloff really was an example of someone who was always like 2 steps ahead of Lugosi. He's like got other kinds of roles. He managed to keep his money. He got paid well for his movies. He was always like, had more power in what he could pick and choose. And
but I think that's also could be about his size. He was a big dude, and he looked like someone that didn't take anyone's crap.
They actually were They weren't. He wasn't that tall.
Really?
He was. I mean, he was tall. He was 6 foot or 6'1", and they're both about the same height. They're both tall guys, but he was really skinny. Like I drew a lot of, I looked at a lot of drawings, photos of him, and he was like, he must have weighed like 130 pounds or 140 pounds. Really skinny guy. So when you see him in the Frankenstein outfit, it's a lot of padding. It's like a giant costume that weighed like 50 pounds or something.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and he actually had like an injury from it. He had like a very bad injury because of an accident in that costume. He had like a back injury.
So there's a sequence of, it's a story. It happens at one point and then it crops up again in a promotional thing. But I was wondering if you could tell the story of Lugosi's involvement with Betty Boop.
Oh yeah,
Betty Boop.
Audience. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there at some point while he was still doing Dracula in a play, he came to before the movie happened. He came to Los Angeles, and then Carla Bow, who was like a very famous actress in the 20s, she was like the staple. What do you call it? I forget the name of those 1920s.
The It Girl.
Yeah, she was the It Girl, but there's a name for those kind of girls, and it's like
Flapper.
Flappers. Yeah, she was the flapper, and she came to see him in Dracula, and they had a romance together. And she, the character of Betty Boop is based on her. So then they made like this short movie where he was brought in to play Dracula. And the woman who voiced the voice of Betty Boop plays Betty Boop. And he comes over and he's like, you have booped your last boop. and he comes in like drinks her blood. And it's just like that kind of stuff. It's just the gold, it's just like so funny because that's his life, like this like very serious, dramatic stuff. But he had a good sense of humor, and there's a lot of funny stuff in there.
That sounds great. Now, obviously, I've been showing off your websites and your social banners and all. And one thing we haven't mentioned yet is the publisher. I mean, you get in this publisher through Humanoids. So talk about the publisher and how that, how open were they when you brought this to the table?
Well, Humanoids is a very established French publisher who, I think started in the 70s. I actually am not an expert on the whole formation, but they were, I think, formed partially by Mobius. And then, the most well-known book is DRACULA, which is this amazing science fiction book by Mobius and Jodorowsky. And they have the American publishing house. And, I did one book with them, which was the Twilight Man about Rod Serling, which did well and got a lot of good press. And so they came to me and they said, well, what's your next thing? What's the next thing? Ooh. And so I had, I think, 3 options, and I sent it over and said, what do you guys think? And we all agreed that Lugosi would be the one. So I like to give options, even though, and I just like to hear what other people think. But I think deep in my mind, I already knew that, like, oh, that's probably the best one, but let's see what they say. So.
That must be a nice feeling, though, that the publisher comes to you. Okay, what you got next, kid? We want more.
Yeah, I do books for other publishers, and I've done projects where I just am the artist drawing it, and it definitely feels better when you're able to pick your subject matter, because then you know that you'll be a lot more involved and more interested in what it's about, rather than, like, I don't know, some book about the financial meltdown of 2009 or whatever. I'm just thinking of something that I wouldn't want to do.
I know what you mean. Basically, when you do something that you get to choose, you'll put more of yourself in it. You're more juiced up about it, as opposed to getting a task. There's a difference. Sure. You could tell a task and something made out of love. There's a huge difference. You could really tell that, which is amazing. So, are we able to pick up this awesome book right now?
It comes out September 28th, so you're going to need to, depending on when this is posted, but you guys are going to need to wait a little bit, but it's right there for, coming up for Halloween, and I hope people can get excited about it and get in the Halloween spirit and learn a little bit about this great actor.
One last question for me, real quick. You're great drawing. I mean, I'm looking at Lugosi right there. He's staring into my soul. Any chance we can pick up a poster or anything of your great artwork of Lugosi, something like that? Because that would be pretty amazing. In fact, I know someone who would love it. So,
not at the moment. I could add it maybe to my website. I do have some prints in my website, but I haven't formulated I haven't done a Lugosi print quite yet. So maybe in the near future I'll check with the publisher and see if that's kosher and I can do that. And if it is, then maybe I will.
So I got 2 more things before you go. The first thing is, are you going to be at any conventions tabling at any point this year, or is that just off the table for 2021?
Probably not. We have 2. I have like a baby and a toddler that are like not vaccinated, so we're being very cautious.
Safety first,
and,
absolutely.
There's probably, I wanted to do for the last book, we had a screening at the School of Visual Arts of Twilight Zone episodes, and I really wanted to do a screening of Lugosi movies, and I don't know if that's going to happen. So. Probably not this year. Hopefully, next year.
Gotcha. And the last question here is, in your journey, as a creator, what's the biggest lesson you've learned thus far that you could share with any future creators that may be tuned in?
Wow. I guess never rest on your laurels. Is that how you say it? Just always see where you can still improve, and always see what is the part of your work that still could be strengthened and improved, and never just be complacent. Just always look to get better and have the next book top the one before. So.
Oh, and talking about the next book, what's the next project? Can you tease us? Is there anything coming?
Yeah, there's a book that's probably going to come out next year. It's another biography. It's drawn by me and written by author David Kushner, and it's about the creation of video games. So it's these two guys, Nolan Bushnell, who created Atari, and Ralph Baer, who is basically the guy who created the first TV console, and they kind of had this back and forth feud between them, where Bushnell stole ping pong from him, and it's an interesting story. So that's what I'm wrapping up now.
Oh my God, I can't wait, because we're building a video game team. So when that's ready, come on over, and I'm gonna have that team definitely speak to you guys about this. That'll definitely be a fun conversation. So again, folks, follow Koren on Twitter right there, Koren Shadmi, please. All right, take a look, follow, show the love, show some support, and of course you can visit the website. So on the website, can we pre-order the Lugosi book there? The Lugosi book?
The Lugosi, yeah. I mean, you can have. There's a link, and you should be able to pre-order it. Yeah.
There you go. So visit the site so that you can put that pre-order in now. Be amongst the first folks to have this wonderful book in your hands about a legend by a future legend right here in Koren. So again, thank you for your time, brother. I do appreciate you and everything you guys do. So keep rocking it, keep killing it. Salute to you and the family. David, thank you for joining me, because I know you got to run out too. With the Alma Omega, the outro tells you what to do. But the one thing that's missing in the outro is make sure to visit our swag shop, comiccrusaders.us, for some awesome swag, and comiccrusaders.shop for all your comic book needs. That's right. All right. So with that, thank you again, and tune in a little bit, because we have a whole bunch more coming. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Comic Crusaders podcast. If you like the content, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, please visit comiccrusaders.com and our extended podcast family over at undercovercapes.com. And also make sure to download the Comic Crusaders app on the Google Play Store today.